So please permit me, with Jesus' joy, to introduce the representative of Mr. Tony Afia. Please, can you put your hands together for him as he takes the address for this evening. Please keep clapping till he gets here. Thank you, Violin.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Such a big shoe to fill. Anyway, Mr. Tony Afia is not very easy at times, but it's not going to be just me alone. It would be I and Mrs. Uyai MM. He sent his greetings and said that I should thank everybody for the opportunity, and also instructed me on certain things that I have to say here. But before I go into not necessarily an address, there was a topic that was given to us. Before I go into the details of it, I want to thank the church in particular, from the head man of the church to the pastors and everyone for putting this up. I'm quite appreciative. I was here yesterday. I saw how the event unfolded. I learned a lot myself. Being in the media, it was quite interesting. I want to say thank you. Thank you for all you do for the community in Akwa Ibom State and for the young people here. Thank you very much. Without further ado, let me get straight into the talking point. The topic I have to address is the insights and perspective on advancing standards within the media. Insights and perspective on advancing standards within the media. Here representing Mr. Tony Afia, the CEO of TAF Media Group. When you talk about TAF Media Group, it embodies first. Well, Mr. Tony Afia is a man that loves being the first at the things he does. So the first privately owned radio station in Nigeria, Planet Radio 101.1. It was the first privately owned radio station not in Nigeria, in Akwa Cross region. I don't know why I'm feeling it should be Nigeria. And next was the first privately owned TV station in the Akwa Cross region, Spectrum TV, Broadening Your Horizon. And in that regard, next was the first radio station that has to do with indigenous language, Tangsio FM, Tangsio Oyoyo. I always say this, that Tony Afia could have been, if he had opportunity to go to the moon first, he could have been the one to go there first. But somehow, within the area of business, he's done it. And he's really impacted many young Akwa Ibomites, over 100 workers under his purview are paying, and that's a lot amid all the concerns within the economy of Nigeria. Based on the topic today, one of the keynotes, key points that are picked from this discussion today would be about one, standard, and the second, media. Insights and perspective on advancing standards within the media. So, keyword, standard. The second aspect of it would be the media. Let me start by talking about standard. What a standard is all about. Basically, standard is a level of quality and attainment that you might want to have. And in the media sector, not many people really understand what a media is all about. So what is a media? The word media comes from, it's a plural to the word medium. Because the tendency is for anybody to think that media is all about the private, media is all about the broadcasting medium, not just the broadcasting medium. A media starts with you and I. If you look at the history of media, right from the 15th century, you realize that it all started with cavemen. Cave writings, not necessarily cavemen, cave writings that took place at a time and transcended to further writings and designs that happened before the radio came aboard. By the 15th century, media became so interesting that there was an invention that took place at that time, the invention of the press. In all of this, when we talk about media, media is simply, okay, for people who studied mass communication, when you talk about media, they always look at the means of mass communication, which involves radio, involves publishing, involves broadcast, involves publishing, and involves the internet of this age. But the media, as it says, it's the main means of mass communication. The media mass media refers to reaching many recipients. From the standpoint that I come from, which is TV, radio, the reason to call it mass media is because we're using one source to reach many people. Okay. So media also involves the internet. Yesterday we talked about it, the internet, and how our different involvement also plays a role in the internet. The goal of media for me is describing the various ways we can communicate. So in the context of media, whether it's broadcast media or a print media or the internet, there's always going to be that communication between the sender of the information and the receiver of the information. And that's why if you tune into a radio station while a program is going on, the first thing you get to hear, most times you get to hear the presenter presents. On the other hand, you can hear the callers calling to also share your views and their views. Similar to social media, you have the situation where people make lots of comments and also have feedback comments in that direction. So media is all encompassing. Where I want to talk about or pay so much attention today that many people who are not in the media space, but even people in the media space do not know, would be the purpose of media. Why do we have media? Number one, it is to inform, which means to give facts based on information. Number two, it's to educate, giving intellectual, moral, social instruction in that regard. Many people look at the media and think to themselves and say the media seem to be an umpire to the relevant discussion that's taking place in the society. But these key two factors are so important in whatever happens in the broadcast media, and not just the broadcast media, and the internet, social media where you're functioning. Most people are also functioning. So you have to inform fact-based information, and you have to educate, giving intellectual, one. Number two, it has to have a moral basis. While I was growing up, I realized that there's something called the true north. The true north is what helps sailors navigate their ways. For those who are using airplanes or pilots, it might be something like that too. So the media seem to create a system based on the moral structure of the society that the media tries to form the cordons that people in the society should follow, give a framework and a mindset, reshape their mindset to what they ought to do. The third role of the media is to entertain to provide excitement, amusement, and also create some kind of enjoyment. It doesn't make sense if you're watching a TV program and you're not excited about it. Am I correct? So there ought to be information, there ought to be education, there ought to be excitement. If there's no excitement in it, it's boring. There are various key programs that we watch, even on social media. What catches your fancy and your attention is when there's information, education, and entertainment in it. So in all of these, the goal that we have, the different media houses, which is also the goal while we're here, is for us to be able to shape public opinion. I repeat, it's for us to be able to shape public opinion, to guide the younger generations on what is the most important things to follow, to also look at our societies. Where are we missing it? How do we shape it? Where are we coming from? Where do we go to? These are primarily so important in the media. But for there to be a media, a proper media, there also ought to be regulations. Regulations from the government, starting from licensing, starting from also what you can post even on social media. There ought to be regulations. Government regulations like licensing, internet regulations. There are certain things you cannot post on social media. In fact, copyright regulations also being part of it. From the media standpoint that we come from, Spectrum TAF Media Group and Spectrum TV, we also have to look at regulations, self-regulations, like handling fake news. I don't know how many of us know how impactful negatively fake news can be. in our society. There are instances where we see the government is fueling propaganda, and it's the duty of the media to set things right. So even you, or not necessarily, let me not say you in that direction, but even a young person that's also working on social media, you have to be careful about fake news because it can impact the society heavily. If you look at the political terrain that we have here, you might see certain news that are coming out and how impactful it could be. A typical case study would be the case of Natasha and Senator Godswill Akpabio. So the media gets to be careful how they navigate the conversation. Where are they pushing the conversation to? I see many media houses, one of the things they do is becoming very aggressive. So in order to get the conversation heightened up, so they try to push certain level of sensations into it, and it can cause trouble. So it brings us to self-regulation in the media. Even the young person that is posting on social media, a single post that you put on social media can cause huge flame in the society. So regarding regulations, what we also have to look at is that regulations are aimed at countering hate speech and harassment. Hate speeches and harassment in the society. It could go even bloody. Yes. I remember a case study of the things that's happened. Virtually all the genocides that has happened in this world were fueled by the media. One of the most famous genocide that took place was that of 1994 in Rwanda, when the then president of Rwanda, April 16, his plane crashed, but it went even further. The current president of Rwanda was accused of it by the French judge, but he came out to deny it and said, no, it's not. But it was that of hate speeches that caused the problem, because we're looking at the Tutsis and the Hutus of Rwanda. And one of those conversations will always be about the June 19 radio announcement that took place. How many of us have heard of it? The June 19 radio announcement that took place. In 100 days, over 800,000 people were killed in Rwanda. Why? It was fueled by the June 19, 1993 radio announcement. What was the announcement? The announcement was simple. It was as simple as this. Rwandans must take back their country. You are not a Rwandan. You are cockroaches. And guess what? It began to define discrimination within the society and the different ethnic groups. So the Tutsis people that were seen like a people before, the Hutus began to see them as what? Cockroaches. And it spanned through the 100 days of killing in Rwanda. The Nazis influenced Adolf Hitler. What did he use? The media. The killing of the Muslims in Bosnia. What happened? The Christians were the ones killing Muslims in Bosnia. And those that changed from Christianity to become to Islam. The Christians were the ones doing that, and others. It was still fueled by the media. So that is why in the media, self-regulation is so important. We have bodies like the NBC that seem to control what goes out in the media. And it's our sole responsibility, every one of us. Let me give perspective to it. When you go to social media, what sells in social media? Nudity. One of the things that sells in social media. The other aspect of it, controversies. So we're seeing the younger generation not having understanding of this, and everyone is jumping to that trend. Can I say praise the Lord? Okay. So everyone is jumping to that trend. But you have to look at your moral compass, your intelligence, your values as a person. What do you seek to achieve while using your social media? What do you seek to achieve while using the media? In the traditional broadcast, we have roles of the electronic media. So we're looking at the use of telephones, the use of virtual sets, and others to see how we can facilitate the broadcasting scenario that we have. Up to social media, it's a trending issue in the world today. Electronic media, specifically social media, we have about 5% of people using social media. As at the last data I checked in 2005, it rose to 79% in 2019, and even further. You can imagine what the number is in 2025. Virtually everyone is using social media. Social media like Instagram, Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, now X, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, and the rest of them. And individuals are spending an average of 2.5 hours every day, an average of 2.5 hours on social media. So social media and training, especially the younger generation, on social media functionality and how to check the moral compass on social media is so important. I believe a young child would first see information on social media before being taught these days because of how viral it is. So let me quickly take us across some of the challenges we face, because you cannot talk about advancing standards in the media without looking at the challenges that you have. Remember, the conversation about the media as at the 18th century. As at the 18th century, the word media was referred to as a means of transporting goods. It wasn't relating to communication. As at the 18th century, that is 1805, 1820, thereabout, even when the first press media was discovered, was invented rather. So a certain man started that definition in I think it was 1861. It started the definition of media that encompassed communication, a means of communication. So it was basically about a way of taking goods from one place to the other. So if you go back in time, in the 18th century, or maybe someone that lived in the 18th century comes today and listens to us talk about media, he will not understand what we're talking about. He will think that we're talking about transporting goods from Akwa Ibom to Lagos. He will think we're talking about canals. He would think we're talking about railways. He would think we're talking about road transportation. So the first definition of media as a means of communication began in 1961. Well, I'll keep it at that. Every sector in Nigeria has its challenges, and the media sector also has its challenges. For us to track and move forward, we should be able to see what the challenges are and see how to rectify it and move even further. Because the question is where the media is coming from and where the media is going to. Not many of us know. Since the internet came in the 20th century and 21st century, it's blowing the media away. Something happened with some of my folks when the Super Eagles of Nigeria came to play a game against Zimbabwe at the Gospel Akpabio International Stadium. So we went for the press conference, and I had a shock of my life. When I got to the press conference, I looked at the traditional media team that was there. It was only us. It was later on I saw ADBN and the rest of them coming, and Afro Sports and others coming. But guess the people that dominated the space? It was the social media content creators. So traditional media is beginning to suffer from the competition that is coming from social media content creators. So they are the first to get the information. They are the first to send out the information. Before now, you saw many people using their radios. I remember my father in particular, blessed memory. Every early hours of the morning, he would listen to VOA. I don't do that because it's at the tip of my finger now by the advent of internet and social media. And so there's a huge battle for traditional media houses competing with the competition that's coming from social media. Information is coming fast and thick. If someone dies in the US now and is a popular person, it takes just 1 minute. Everyone in Nigeria would be aware of it except you've not gone on social media. So it's viral. Even before the traditional media goes to embrace it, to get the information, someone has done a snapshot and said, Muhammad Ali is back to life. People begin to comment. So it's that fast. So we do not know where it's taking into next, where the media conversation is going next. We know where it's coming from. We know where we are. but where are we going? And that is where trainings and different level of exploitation is needed, in particular for the younger generation. Because not many people know that they themselves are media. What's the definition of media, as I talked about? A medium. So media is just a plural of medium. So all of us, we are in the media. The information you give out is affecting our society, either negatively or positively. And I'm encouraging all of us to look at the ethical conversation regarding media, to look at intellectual capacity when we're posting stuff on social media, to also look at the moral compass, because our society is getting to that point where you no more know what is right or wrong. For example, these days, if you call somebody he, there's a problem. Because people are having generalized pronouns. Before it was basically a he and a she. And now someone wants to be known as a it. But some say, no, I am a there. Does it make sense? Well, I do not know. Because the media is not supposed to be a judge. The media is like a football referee who's not supposed to be a judge. When you watch a football match and the referee seems biased, what happens? If people feel infuriated, and that is the same thing with the media. So part of the challenges of the media would be fast around audience measurements. How do we get the set data of who's watching and who's not watching? I remember always having conversation with Mrs. Uya. I said, let's track the followers, the listeners that we have. But it's getting more complicated now. Why? Because the listener is also having too many opportunities. I remember those days, all I need to do is go to Plaza, get a sports newspaper, and we're fine. But if I go to Plaza and I get a sports newspaper, it's stale. It's stale. The information is stale. It doesn't make any sense because all the latest information I can access with my phone. So the problem for the viewer, the listener is, where do I listen to? I flipped to this radio station. They're saying this. The next thing I flipped to this. In Akwa Ibom State, when Planet Radio came in, it was just Planet Radio and AKBC. Now, how many of them? About 14 of them thereabout in Akwa Cross region. How are you going to listen to what you want to listen to? And now the demands continue even further for the media houses. For the person that leads in the media work, the person that gives the best information, the persons that creates the best moral compass, and the person that excites the listener and the viewer the most. Well, for people who are in the media sector, we do not have anything like listeners or viewers. It's a wrong use of concepts. So it's listener. So while I'm a broadcaster and I'm presenting on air, I always say, I hope you had a good time. You are listening to me because I'm speaking to you directly. I'm not speaking like I'm speaking to everybody. That's how the structure is. And there are certain bodies that create the regulation in the system, NBS being one of them. Let's move on and talk about other things. The challenges of the media. Tracking returns on investment attribution. I'll just be fast because I just need Uyai to say one or two things before I leave. Thank you. Monetization is a problem, just as I talked about it. Direct media are suffering from advertisements, competition from social media now. Like I went to the stadium, you saw all the content creators. So whatsoever you're going to pick up there, before you edit it and put it on your TV station, at a time, it's already viral. So you don't have that first impression of information that you had before. So the competition, it means that the traditional media has to do more. And that is why, if you go on social media, you see the traditional media are also competing with the content creators, because the social media is now the new in-tech. A part of the problems of the media is recruitment and retention of top talents. Yesterday, while we're having the conversation, I heard there was a new oil, they call it tech. And now the best of talents who are supposed to be in the media front are going to the tech industry. They say, come on, there's no money in the media. So let's go to the tech. These are part of the problems that's affecting, because you need the pool of the best talent to be the one, pool of the best intelligence to be the one communicating to the public. And there are evolving market, business costs. We all suffer that, all of us in businesses. Well, content overload also is a factor at the end of it for the media houses. Still a battle with social media. The former, they call it fear of missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. Let me talk a bit on this before I get to close. FOMO, fear of missing out. If you're a trader, you always hear about FOMO. People want to follow the trends. Yesterday, we were talking about trends here. But I do not think it should be all about trends, because there's a reverse psychology in all of this. There's also a concept of content fatigue. So I'm seeing the same thing everywhere. One media house is copying the next media house, and they're copying the next media house. Everyone, when they see this one doing a particular thing, everyone follows it. So there's becoming to be a lack of originality. So you tune to your radio, tune to your TV, they're saying the same things. No genuine perspective. It's a work and a challenge for us to have standardization, that there ought to be originality in the media concepts that we are showing. Well, there's also this part that talks about managing agency rosters, fragmented market and integrated competition. I've talked about competition already. Dwindling advertising revenues, and then greater regulation scrutinies. Threat to praise freedom. Threat to praise freedom. It's another thing. So the media houses, or the media body, it's the watch eye of the society. So it is important that whatsoever governments do or political setups do should give praise the freedom, because the praise is the listening ear to the common man. The only place you can vent all you have to vent would be when there's a radio program. You see people call on a radio program and they give perspective and say everything they want to say. On a TV show, you have that freedom of speech. To say Nigeria is bad, we all heard what happened regarding that copper girl from Calabar. The copper girl from Calabar, I trended on social media that said the president was not doing well. We've had many people talk about it, but there's need for freedom of expression, praise freedom, for us to checkmate the society the way we ought to. There's taxation, a big problem in the media sector, just as is a big problem in businesses. Well, let me conclude by saying this. Okay, before I talk about that, I just want to talk about media idolatry. When church, the Bible says, "Thou shalt have no other God besides me." Media idolatry. There's this thing that happens to a younger generation. It feels their self-worth. They're consumed by social media. They're consumed by trends that are coming from the social media. So it pushes them to do certain things they ought not to do. Self-worth becoming a problem. They don't have a mind of their own because they're over-dependent on social media and the information that is transpiring there. So my advice is, do not yet let the information, various information scattered around, consume your time overly, that you don't have a relationship with your family and you don't have your own life. It is important. Finally, media leadership. I want to close with this, media leadership. To be a leader in any sector, you must be a man that has a vision, or a woman with a vision. There ought to be a vision of what you want to achieve, even in the media space. This is how I define vision. A vision is a common solution to the common problem of a particular people. I repeat, a vision is the common solution to the common problem of a particular people. I want to see media houses, content creators that are solving problems. What is that thing you aim to solve? What is the problem that you're bringing solution to while you're doing what you're doing, even on social media? Are you just following the trends? Dancing half naked? Are you just following the trends? Using slur words on social media? What is that problem you solve? Is a question that I ask every one of us. As media houses, Spectrum TV, Planet Radio, Thanksio FM, and the rest of the media houses, what is that problem that you are solving in the media space? Are you just going there, hoping to have views, at the end of it, make money? It's a call on duty for every one of us to look at the vision that we have towards the media. Thank you very much. So please permit me to invite Mrs. Uyai to give perspective. We're hoping that we're seeing young people here. And one of the ideas we're looking at to talk about, there could be a young person that is thinking, how do I become a broadcaster? How do I be so big in the media space, do this job? And Mrs. Uyai would have to do that for us. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's already a loaded evening, and I want to appreciate Destiny Mission Global for this particular opportunity, for having our boss, Tony Afia. But my supervisor has already said everything, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. But one key thing I'm going to say as a kingdom person this evening is the fact that Job 32 verse 8 says that there is a spirit in man, the inspiration of the Almighty gives him understanding. So that is going to be my approach to the very short conversation I will bring. Just to build on some of the things that he has said. It's important that as Christians, as we engage the media, we are not big on being consumers on that space. So growingly, we are seeing that, the Babylonian system, the world has a lot more content on the media space. Now, when we are talking media space, just as he has said, it goes beyond even social media. There's several other facets. There's radio, there's television, there is print, there's newspapers, magazine, all sorts of them. But it's important that as church people, as kingdom people, we begin to leverage on the media generally, whether it's the broadcast medium, taking advantage of things like Tangsio FM, which is a vernacular speaking station. It means that if you have a product or a product concept and you want to sell it to those in the rural area, if the governor really wants to sell his idea of agriculture, the best place to have that conversation right now in Akwa Ibom is actually on Tangsio FM. Because the average person in a rural community is listening to that radio station as an idol. So you have to know the appropriate channel to use to convey your message or sell your product. But what I'm saying this evening to us as Christians is, how do we get to the point that on these spaces, we are now innovators and bringing solutions? Remember that the scripture talks about that saviors will rise out of Zion. One of the ways that saviors will rise out of Zion is if we are infiltrating the systems with solutions. And one of the things that we see in the media is that there's now a lot more about propaganda depending on who you side. So you hear things like, oh, this TV station belongs to the president, so they cannot antagonize the president's policies and ideas on that particular station. Or this one belongs to the government, so they don't antagonize the government. So we see that bias always finds a way to flow into all that we do. But as believers, how can we bring innovation into the media space? Not just about Bible app or music app or everything. Even solutions for technology, for sewing, for agriculture, for education, everything. We need to begin to, when you go into the place of prayer, Lord, how can I take advantage of the media? How can I use this gift? What can I bring on the media space that will be different? But one key thing that I have to touch also this evening, and I'll give you one solution, because the problem that we have with the multiplicity of platforms that we have is fake news. So I'm going to give you a few platforms that you can actually verify information and news content. Because if you continue, and it's part of the ways that we uphold the standards that we have in the media industry. So whether you are a practitioner or you are a consumer, one key thing that you need to do that will help you stand out now is personal development and dynamism. If you don't stretch the dynamic of who you are, you will not be relevant in the system. Because just as Mr. Blyden said, there's a lot more people copying and pasting. But you have to discover your originality, which you would do through a lot more reading, a lot more research, a lot more fact-finding and critical thinking. So if you're not a person who knows how to consume books or lengthy articles, you will not be able to listen to a radio presenter or a TV presenter and be like, nope, what you're saying is wrong, or it's not absolutely true, or they lack fact. Have you listened to somebody on the radio or the TV before and they're just rambling? They're actually not saying anything, but they have the proper vocab, they're well dressed and they're just rambling up and up, but they're not really saying, Auntie, what are you saying? Where is the fact? When did it happen the first time? When was the repeat? What are the solutions and the patterns that you can draw? So personal development and discovery of your dynamism is important. So if there is a young person here who hopes to become a broadcaster tomorrow, you already know that the market is dense with AI coming. I have watched news contents that are delivered by AI-generated algorithms. So they just put a pretty woman's face there, but she's not a human being. So even that is coming. But there is a touch of humanity that you can bring to whatever you're doing. And the key there will be storytelling. So one advantage of using the media is knowing how to tell a story. Whether you're selling clothes, whether you're selling hair, whether you're teaching, that's edutech, whatever you're doing, the power of knowing how to tell a story would give you advantage in the media space. So it's not just a 30 days of content challenge. You have to post something for 30 days and you just come today. I came to Destiny Chapel and then I post. You have to be able to tell a story that is engaging. But on top of that, solution-oriented media production and consumption is now becoming a necessity. There is more propaganda and divisiveness going on in the media space. So if we have people that are here and are inspired to create content or do anything, make sure that you're not jumping on trends and controversies. Try the solution angle and you would realize that there is a more hungry market for solutions on the media space than there is for propaganda. But like I said, let me quickly share some platforms where you can fact check any information, before you jump and say, no, but I heard it. I read it on social media. Social media is not a news platform. Everybody can come there and share whatever they please. So if you need to fact check some fact check information, you can check on SNOPS. That's SNOPES. Of course, that's really popular when you're fact checking. You can also use PolitiFact, and that with PolitiFact you will have a lot more fact checking of political stories. PolitiFact is one place you can also check. On your browser extensions, you can use NewsGuard. That's where you'll be able to fact check information. Don't swallow everything you see. Media biases and fact check. So I'll use one of my colleagues, my senior colleagues, as an example. So a lot of people accuse Rufai Oseni of being biased. So if you want to fact check some of the things he said on his show, whether they had any touch of bias, one place to check is the media bias, and the fact check is also a browser extension. There's something also called the BS detector. So you can also use that to check if this information is correct. You just heard that, Governor Pastor Moino, he came to former, what's this place now? I've forgotten the name. He came there and he was sharing to 2 million. You saw him by 5 p.m. Are you really sure? Someone now photoshops a picture of the governor and sets it up. Look at it now. You can check BS detector to be sure whether that news is correct or not. Viral Guard is another one. Fact check. If you just use Google, I like to tell people Google is your friend. So use it. You also have Google Fact Check, Microsoft News, Wikipedia, the oldest of them all that we know. But there is a laziness that social media has brought to all of us, and we no longer engage. I think this is where I am going to have to draw the curtains on my conversation this evening. But it's important that you keep rediscovering yourself. And as I said, key factor, storytelling is the core of media. So if you don't know how to tell a story, read more books and then keep trying it out. exemplified right on your status. Some people will react, oh, that was nice, I like the way you wrote it. Ask your family members, they're your strongest critique. But write a story of how you decided to start selling moi moi. When you want to sell the moi moi on social media, tell a story about the condiments. What is beans? Beans is Mr. Bean, and he did this. And I do hope that that helps somebody this evening.